It is the Anfield Wrap. Neil Atkinson, joined by Paul Johnson, by Sean Rogers and by Dan Austin. We're going to do a show that's in 4 parts. We're going to talk about Ait-Nouri, the idea of succession planning, and whilst planning for now, we're also going to talk about the Euros, whether we like it or not. It is an ongoing football tournament, and occasionally some football does break out. Not very often, but we're going to talk about that aspect as well. We'll talk about Thiago and Adrian, what might have been in one instance, and what was clearly someone who very much enjoyed playing for Liverpool in another. Esme Smithson will be on from the Brain Charity, speaking to John Gibbons, and at the end of the show we're going to play our first Schoolyard game since about 2016. That was one of John Furlong's as well, if I remember rightly. We're going to be over in the US in July. We are at Pittsburgh on July the 25th at the Pitch, it says here. On Saturday the 27th of July we're at Exiles. We've been there before in Washington DC. Very much like that gaff a great deal. We've also been to the Brow House on the 30th of July. We'll be back there in Philadelphia, so do come if you fancy that sort of thing there. Philadelphia being the big week. And then on the 2nd of August we're at the Tin Roof in Columbia, South Carolina. So it is the 25th for Pittsburgh, 27th for Exiles, 30th for Philadelphia, and the 2nd of August for Columbia. You can see all of this if you go to theanfieldwrap.com/TAW live, TAW live, tour live in there, and you can get all the tickets you need from that. I'm just going to find out how much they are as I go all the way through. It says here $32.40, including the booking fee, $30 without the booking fee. Come, join us and enjoy that sort of thing. Ait-Nouri was linked, and I'm not getting that carried away with the link, Dan Austin, of Ait-Nouri, but what actually hit me when the link came in was that there's an idea of, with Robertson, succession planning, and then you have a little look at the squad, and whilst a lot of Liverpool players are under 26, there are 4 regular starters, 4 who've been part of a huge amount of success at the football club, for all of whom there needs to be a form of succession planning from now. I want to talk about Ait-Nouri in a minute or two, but it does feel to me as though Robertson's arguably the easiest to succession plan for, and that's not talking down his abilities. The other 3 look to me to be quite complicated tasks.
Yeah, Van Dijk and Alisson, I suppose, in particular, simply because they either are or have been the very best in the world in their position during their time with Liverpool. And Salah, I think, whenever it is, are looking to replace him, it's possibly not like a direct replace, like a right-sided player that's actually left-footed and is quick, etc., etc. You could just try and do something different with the attack. Robertson is the only one where it's okay. Well, can we buy as close to him again? Because that would be really nice. And it's just buying a left back. You're not necessarily ripping up the way that you play in order to do so. I thought he was Liverpool's best player for 2 months, probably at the end of the season, or however long it was when he came back.
I agree.
He seemed, not only was he just like technically on it, looked fit after admittedly having quite a while out, but he seemed to be the only one that sort of like mentally got it. In the he seemed quite frustrated by things that were going on around him, but in what I would deem to be a healthy way. Some of the others, I think, kind of were arguing with each other in a way that was maybe detrimental, or at times just looked a bit meek. I think he was the one who kind of like pitched his temperament right, like his level of frustration was the most practical, if that makes sense. And he was also just playing really well, so I don't think there's an idea that Liverpool would necessarily need to buy a left back right now who is suddenly their first choice and plays most weeks, and Robertson's on the bench. But I do take the point that given his age, and also in the past couple of seasons he has played fewer matches because of injuries. I know that this time it was like an impact thing on international duty, so it's not like a sign that his body is slowing down or his natural fitness is getting worse or something like that. But I take the point that the 4 of them are probably the ones in line over the next, say, 3 years, you would think. Certainly the outfield ones will maybe not be starters for Liverpool. Goalkeeper's possibly a little bit more different in the, first of all, has he got a really good one, and if he doesn't leave, then they're probably just fine until you actually get to that point where the current number 1 does go. But also he could potentially still play for Liverpool in 7 years, maybe, and still be really good. So I guess that one's maybe a little bit pressing, unless he suddenly comes along one day and says, I think I've had enough of it here and I'd like to go and live somewhere else. But I do think that the left back is maybe the most kind of simultaneously straightforward, but also there'd probably be different options to do it, and you wouldn't necessarily need to like rush somebody in right away. So it could be a sensible thing to maybe like buy a younger one now if they're going to move Tsimikas on, with the idea that younger one then in 3 years' time is the one who starts every single week.
On Dan's point, Sean, around what Robertson ends the season last season, I emphatically agree with him. I think Robertson ends the season pretty impressively. I think also Van Dijk keeps his level all the way through the season. And I think those two things are related. Robertson has the impact injury, but it gives him, in the middle of the season, 13 weeks, I think it was, where he doesn't play. Van Dijk, for at least the first 2/3 of the season, is not having the load he's had in years gone by. I want to come on to talk about that maybe a little bit in the context of the Euros as well right now. But that's one of the reasons why, you know, there's an argument around getting this planning sorted. We keep talking about next season with the additional 2 more Champions League games, which doesn't sound like much, but the nature of the Champions League next season versus the Champions League full stop and the Europa League for us last season, it's quite different. I think that Liverpool, simultaneously, succession planning is difficult, but this could prove to be a bit of a good moment, because what you could also do is lengthen the careers and the ability to contribute to the very highest level for the footballers who you're actually looking to do the succession planning for.
Yeah, not just at club level. You can see in the various international tournaments there's a lot of focus on the country that you live in, I guess. But there's not many nations involved in all of the tournaments right now. Flying, pairing, that look fresh, that look in good nick. And I think you're not too far away from everyone, from players up and even from boardrooms down, working out that you're going to have a proper squad that you rotate, make full use of the 5 subs as often as you can. And I think you have to probably throw the dice a little bit in the first half of the season, because ultimately all the stuff that matters, you need people on the run-in, fresh, pairing and in form, and that's when you're going to want to do less rotation. And that's where the big players are really going to want to be. It's obviously much more difficult in England because the fine margins of competing for the Premier League title and going toe-to-toe with Man City, I don't think they give you quite the same luxuries as, say, you know, if you're a top team in La Liga or Serie A, where you think, you know, we can make 7 changes because we're playing a bottom 3-4 side at home, who are just going to be happy with a 2-0 defeat. Whereas, you know, as you referenced quite correctly, look at West Ham's best players. Neil, you know, going away to Brentford, you can make it look easy, but going into it, you can't really be doing that. And when you've got such a fine line, such tight margins in the league, it's difficult. So I think, yes, you're going to have to do a lot of rotation and clever minute planning, I think. And also for the players, you know, there's a lot of talk about wage increases and stuff like that. But if they can get an extra 2-3 years on a deal, at a top club, it negates the pay rise to a certain extent, and especially with the way Liverpool do bonuses, if you can sell it that they're going to be successful. I think the biggest thing with contract negotiations is going to be difficult, and I'm not looking at any Liverpool players here necessarily, but if you're a footballer and you're going to miss out on the goal bonus and the assist bonus, I think you've got to restructure your bonus scheme and make it more about the group, and that if you're behaving, working hard and training and participating, you don't lose out. You know, there's a famous story of a Tottenham player who told Martin Jolly wasn't coming on because it just hit 71 minutes and he wouldn't get his win bonus. And, you know, that does go on. And even if it doesn't go on the match day, it is a factor. If you're going to lose money by view of that, whereas there's other clubs where you won't lose money and you're in contract negotiations and stuff, it can be a factor at other clubs, maybe not so much at Liverpool. So I do think it's definitely a squad factor. I think on the subject of the individual players you've mentioned, I agree with everything that's been said on Alisson completely. I think with Van Dijk, it would be a mistake to replace him. I think you replace Van Dijk by looking at your centre-back partnerships. In that, it doesn't matter if you've got a great centre-back, it's got to be rock-solid partnerships. And yes, we don't have to go and sign someone that's the best centre-back we've ever seen or a rival to Van Dijk. And I think they can look at the makeup of the centre-backs they're going to have and work out what the weaknesses are and maybe sign a centre-back that dovetails with the others really well and go, right, how do we get a centre-back partnership that actually is on a similar level to the ones that we had peak Virgil involved in? Because as good as the transfer committee are, setting them the task of getting another Van Dijk is one hell of a task. And I think with Robertson, I think you go more into the tactical elements of it. You know, you've got a lot of sides now who you ultimately have a bank of 5 at the back. You might have 2 and 3 in front, or you might have 3 and 2 in front. And a lot of teams will keep one of the full-backs back now, and you might invert the other one, or you might bomb the other one on. And when you've got Trent, Conor Bradley in your side, there's possibly a temptation for me that you maybe sign a left-back that's more Nathan Ake than Andy Robertson in that regard, because you've got to figure out, well, what am I likely to be doing with my right-back? And in neither Trent or Conor Bradley situation do you want them being the cover defender in that regard, I don't think. And for Andy Robertson, from a longevity point of view, he's played in a back three with Scotland. It might be something that him not rampaging down the left-hand side all the time might suit him, might suit us a little bit, because he can just progress the ball from deeper. You know, it might be progressing from defence to midfield rather than doing like midfield to the attacking phase.
There is around this, Paul, this idea of, you know, when you get to Ait-Nouri, he is an attacking left back. Sorry, I mean he plays the majority of his game for Wolves last season at left wing back. I think he's even featured further forward at times.
He played number 10 in a couple of games.
Yeah, in the cup, because they were really short of options. It would be Liverpool. A player like that would be Liverpool committing to an attacking left back. I wonder on Sean's point whether or not Liverpool, you know, either want to have the option of building it a little bit differently, or whether or not, you know, with the way in which Slot might want to play. You know, it was interesting, I thought, the language out of the press conference from Hughes more than Slot was this idea of, we see our blueprint, we see our aim as being that we play attacking football, we play dynamic football, almost like that comes from the very top, whether that's Edwards, whether it's higher than Edwards. We're great to watch. And I think that there's a thing here with Liverpool where they want to make that the blueprint. So that's why the Ait-Nouri link to me is really interesting, because there's no getting away from it. He is a very, very, very aggressive left back.
Yeah, he's in the mould of, as you say, a really attacking threat, isn't he? You know, I think Sean mentioned about, you know, Robertson and so did Dan earlier about his, you know, he finished the season really strongly. I think when he wasn't playing, I think, you know, Tsimikas, it just didn't seem to be his I don't know, I just think he lost his form or whatever, and that was concern if Robbo does get injured and Tsimikas doesn't, you know, play as you know, because when we signed him and he, you know, for the season we won the cup and obviously he scored the pen and that, you know, he was an able replacement, and I don't think there was any Liverpool fan who was, you know, that disappointed if he was on a starting 11. But moving forward, I don't know what the plans are with Tsimikas. Again, a new manager might be a fresh start for him. You know, he's back in training already, isn't he? And it could be something that, you know, he looks to, you know, push on himself. But definitely, in terms of the blueprint and how you want to play, when I heard the Ait-Nouri link, it was the first thing I thought was, you know, the threat he can give you going forward.
He's lightning quick.
Yeah, he's really quick, isn't he? And you mentioned there that he played in a number 10. You know, he's really good on the ball. I mean, and obviously you have to do that to be able to play in a number 10 as well as a left back. So it's something that if that one did progress, I'd be really happy with it. It's just, again, as Sean said and as Dan alluded to earlier, it's how one we want to play and where we see, you know, Robbo fitting in, because, you know, the back three is a really good shout in terms of if that is something that, you know, is a change that he looks to do. But I think it's the other thing as well when you sit in, okay, well, if we are going to get a left back in and a young left back, you know, obviously as something who is going to replacement, who else is out there? And you know, you sit there and you think there's no one who really jumps out for you as someone you think, oh, I'd like to go out and get him. No, and the lad at Fulham, I think he was linked, and I watched him a couple of times, and he was okay. But again, is it Robinson? Is it,
yeah,
you know, the left
lightning
back?
quick, but not as good on the ball as Ait-Nouri.
No, not at all. So I like the Ait-Nouri link, and if it you know progressed, I would be really happy with it. It's just there's a lot of factors in at the moment which would.
I think if Lloyd Kelly hadn't had the injury problems he'd have, Liverpool would have signed him. I think Lloyd Kelly ticks a lot of boxes, and I think it's one of them you'd probably rather him have gone somewhere else than where he's gone, because that might have been one that if he had a year or two with a clean bill of health, I wouldn't have been surprised if Liverpool made a move if he'd have gone to someone in between the two clubs, really.
With Ait-Nouri himself, I mean, the other thing about this is Wolves have done Max Kilman, which is a massive move. Let's be clear about this, because he was club captain, Kilman, and he's gone to West Ham. Signed a 7-year deal, which I think is interesting in and of itself, because I think that's in the interest of the player rather than in the interest of the club. He's 27, so it's a funny time to sign a 4-year deal. He's done a 7-year deal there into West Ham, so he's going to be a West Ham player for the rest of his career, realistically, or close to it. The player himself now, though, given that, you know, Wolves probably don't need to sell, Dan, if they've done Max Kilman. But it's felt like Wolves understand that they're part of that conveyor belt bit of football a little bit for a while. You would think that if Liverpool decided that they were very interested, they could find a financial agreement, and they appear to have a good relationship with Wolves from previous deals.
Yeah, I think what you're saying about Wolves is right. They signed up to it from a incoming's point of view as well. By doing the whole George Mendes thing, I think there's a bit less of that now. But I mean, like having Ruben Neves in the Championship, for example, I think they sort of knew, we'll get kind of first dibs on a crop of young talent. But the idea is that when they're 24, 25, 26, whatever it is, they go and play for a bigger side after that, and we make the money on it. The last couple of years, the finances have been really, really bad. They actually did very well last year to avoid one of the points deductions that the other side's got. They maybe don't need to sell him then. I think it would take an awful lot of money to buy him. Not only is he really good, he's one of the best players, and he's still really young. I think he's just turned 24. Was he still 23? Around 23,
24.
He first got into the Angers team in France when he was 17, I think, and then became like the full-on first choice when he just turned 18, which is really impressive. You don't get many fullbacks that age, really. You might get like a really special forward who is playing wide or something like that at that age, but it's not very common for a fullback, especially with a team like Angers at the time were doing relatively well, like finishing 11th, 12th in the league fairly regularly, but ultimately treading water and trying to not go down, and they have done since. So I think it's a testament to not just his ability, but also his character, that he's been able to, he feels like he's been around forever at that age. He's played in the Premier League now loads and loads of games. I think someone good will get him at some point, maybe not this summer, but maybe next, but they're going to have to pay an awful lot of money, and that will be justified from Wolves' point of view, given they've sold, Neves and Jota and people like that in the past for high but ultimately reasonable money.
Yeah.
I think the same will happen again here, but what is reasonable for him might be 60, 65 million quid.
He'll feel high for a left back, I think is the point.
Exactly, but if you go through like the real sort of top level left backs that are out at the minute, I know we'll come on to the Euros, but I thought Nuno Mendes was unbelievable against France. He was the only good player on the pitch. But he wasn't just good, he was like amazing. He was beating 3 or 4 people at a time, and he's done really well for PSG. Had a big injury, missed it. But if you're like, I mean, Real Madrid are maybe going to get Alphonso Davies by the sounds of it, but if you're one of the very biggest clubs in the world, there's not like a huge pool of absolutely amazing, he could just come and play for us on the regular left backs. And I think he's pretty much one of them. That maybe makes it a little bit tougher to sell to him. If it's, well, we have still got this one, but he's 31 and you'll maybe play half the time, and maybe you could do centre mid a little bit, and then in a few years you'll be just the first choice left back. If someone else is just able to say, just be our left back, if you want, then that might be an easier sell to the player.
That might be an easier sell to the player, Sean. I think it's a really valid point. I think one of the things with him, in terms of the eye test, Ait-Nouri, is he's one of the wide players I think he's done the best against Salah. Whenever we've come up against them, I think that might be one of the reasons why I think a lot of Liverpool supporters are actually maybe warmer than the general public around Ait-Nouri, is that we've watched Liverpool play Wolves, found it a really hard game, and one of the reasons why.
And we played them every 3 weeks, so you get to see him a lot.
It was more regular than that, wasn't it?
Yeah, there is you'd seen him, you'd seen what he was about, you'd seen what he could do, and I do think that's why we are sort of like, I'm intrigued by it. I'm not a left back person on the whole. You just got to put up with them. I love the one we've got, and I just sort of run him forever, but that's not possible. He's grabbed my attention there, and I think that's important, because you can talk about a lot of his attacking prowess, but it's worth saying you've seen him be able to do one-on-one defending at a really, really high level.
Totally. Just as a fan and pure make-believe, if you could move Tsimikas out and bring him in, there's no one going to say no to that. As you've gone through there, it's just going to be a really difficult deal to do, and somewhere where it's not in a must category for Liverpool. It's probably in the, we'd love to do it, but unless someone came in with a silly bid for Tsimikas, that is unlikely to happen. You wonder why Liverpool would do it right now. If anything, Liverpool might be happy that Wolves have done what they've done, and you ask the player to wait maybe a year. The only thing you could do, again, coming back onto the minutes talk, but I don't think we're there yet, is I think there'd be a lot of players where if you were looking after them, you'd only want them playing 3,000 to 3,500 minutes a year. And when you look at the Champions League schedule, that's where you could maybe pitch to people and go, listen, I don't want Andy Robertson playing any more than 3,000 minutes. That's if he's available. So if you add up everything else, we've got it. And that's not what people want to hear, because you just want to play all the time.
Well, it's worth saying that the guaranteed 720 minutes, if you want to do it that way, in the Champions League because of the 8 games. That's 720. So if you're saying 3,000, that's already a quarter of them, if you sort of see what I mean. That's just Champions League games, and that's presuming you don't progress to any further phase in the Champions League, the way in which the season's now structured.
Yeah, and especially if you're an international and you really care about international football and you really want to be at the tournament, which most, obviously, virtually all of them do. There's that factor as well, because look at the way the tournaments are going now, especially for European, Nations League, European Championships, World Cup, etc. I'm not sure we're quite at that point where players are going to necessarily look at it that way. And again, that's where you come back to the boring talk I had before about bonuses and stuff, because unless that's structured correctly, they're potentially losing out on dough. But I really like the player, but again, it comes down to what you want to do tactically. He'd be a terrible signing for Arsenal, because Arsenal want to invert the left back at the moment and sit him alongside the 6, and then they move Declan Rice up one. So, it's funny, if you were Arsenal, you'd be more keen on Joe Gomez than you would be on Ait-Nouri. But if you were just talking about what we understand the left back to be and what we've seen, we would all go, and you see the England talk of Kieran Trippier. If Kieran Trippier played for Arsenal, he'd look a hell of a lot better than he looks now, because Arsenal would be using him in different ways, like what they do with their current left backs. Whereas if you want someone going to gallop down the left wing and get on the overlap in the more traditional sense, Ait-Nouri would be fantastic. But if you're going to say, no, I want Trent to go and do these things, and I want a left back that's going to sit alongside Van Dijk and make it a back 3, then he'd be a terrible signing. So I think a lot of it depends on the tactical shape, and that's another reason why Liverpool might just be waiting a little bit until they know exactly what build-up structure Slot wants to use.
You mentioned there about different teams and how they play, and we sat here, and again Hughes has alluded to it, that Klopp, Slot and Klopp's play style are the most similar, hence why we've obviously recruited them. But until we actually know, and obviously they're not going to give these things away in press conferences, what he's looking for from his left back. We know what we've got with Robbo and what he can do. Slot might want something completely different, and all of a sudden, he might fit into that. So it's a great point, and I think until we understand, I think he's one who I think all around the table we all like, but until we see where it goes, then watch this space, I suppose.
In the general sense of the succession, however it's done, Dan, to me, with the exception of goalkeeper and centre half, the 5 subs attracts. So the idea of 60s and 30s, if you played Saturday, Tuesday, 60s and 30s, to split the role, keep everyone involved, or keep a number of players involved across the course of the squad, allowing for injuries, allowing for workload and tactical decisions. I think there's a lot in that. If you are playing Saturday, Tuesday, if you're playing Sunday, Wednesday, which we want to be, and this is the other key point, Liverpool want to be playing really, really big games at the end of seasons. And I think that this is where, I think it's also one of the reasons why, for me, the idea of whether or not you prioritise the domestic cups is almost for the birds now, in that you're going to have so many players, they're going to end up playing in the domestic cups anyway, and you're going to almost certainly feel better sides than most of your opponents, round in, round out. So you're likely just to keep progressing there unless you get another top 8 side away. My point is that those opportunities are going to be there, but you've got to be able to talk the talk and walk the walk in terms of making those changes.
Yeah, firstly, you're right about the domestic cups. Liverpool have got to multiple finals in the past few years where they've not planned to or really aimed to. They've just kind of got there through a combination of players who don't necessarily start in the league, playing really well, and some relatively kind draws. And then in the games where they've come up against the better sides, they've done pretty well. I don't think Liverpool have set out to go, we really want to win the League Cup this year or anything like that. I don't think they will do this time either. I think you're right in terms of using the squad and the substitutes and everything. I think it's a lot easier to make that argument internally to current players that you've got rather than externally to ones that you might like to buy. Because a lot of them just think, I want to be the main player. And you totally understand that. But you'd have to really do a very good job with not just the player, but like his agent and all of the other people who are around him. An awful lot of them use their families and stuff now to make the case that, actually you maybe starting 3 out of these 8 Champions League games and then playing these games after that we're looking at the minute that are like away in the league or whatever, that's how you're going to get your way into the team, and then that will progress to this amount of minutes in the next year and whatever. It's like a really solid argument, and it will elongate players' careers and stuff like that, but you have to be really good at talking them into it. And it's not a guarantee that someone really, really good will just say, you know what, that's actually really smart, and that will make things better for me when I'm 31, when I'm 21 now. I just think, I just want to play football every week, which is also entirely justified. So I think if you're explaining that to a player like, you know, any of the like 10 or 11 centre-mids Liverpool currently have, makes full sense to them. No one's kicking up a fuss,
and they've also lived the experience of what one of these seasons is like.
Exactly. If you're explaining it to a really highly rated player from sort of lower down the pyramid, who's maybe not had that like back and forth between Tuesday and Saturday or Wednesday and Sunday or whatever it is before, it can maybe be a bit of a tougher sell with it, where they just think, well, I'm just really good, just pick me. So it'd be interesting to see what they do in terms of all the left backs that are maybe not like as good yet, or as high profile, or even as old. Stuff as it sounds to say as Rayan Ait-Nouri. I really like Milos Kerkez, that plays for Bournemouth.
Yeah.
I didn't know he's only 20. He's playing for Hungary in the Euros. One of the commentators said that. I thought he was older. He's really good. And there's a lad called Adrian Truffert who plays for Rennes, that's in the France Olympic squad that Thierry Henry's picked. And he does all the stuff that Robertson does. Like, really receives the ball really high up the pitch, good crosser, good passer, reasonably quick, very good going back. Someone good will buy him in the next couple of years, and it might be smart if like next year or the year after it's Liverpool.
Moving on then to the Euros, we'll bring that in on the Nuno Mendes question in a second or two as he is enthused by it. I'll go to you first, Paul. I mean, Christ, they were bad games. Apart from I actually thought Germany-Spain was a really good game, and I was surprised the commentators were half acting like it wasn't. Maybe they knew what was in store for the other three. I think there's a bit on the exhaustion of players. I think there's a bit on everyone, I think, with the possible exception of Turkey, who I think felt like they were on a bit of a mission, might be thinking to themselves, we can win this, the overall thing. So quarterfinals almost felt a bit like semi-finals. You don't want to give anything away. I just thought they were really poor games. Just really, really poor games. Standard shape, individual performances, courage. You know, I thought just full stop. They were difficult watches.
And it's everyone you speak to. Everyone you speak to, so working on the school run this morning, and bumped into three fellas and exactly the same thing. They were like, been crap on it, and it's like, there's no one who's enjoyed it. I thought the Spain-Germany game was okay. I thought there was patches that were really good.
Yeah.
But then the other three have been really, really poor. And I think whether it's being cagey or, like you said, I think because maybe they're at a point where they think, well, we can win this, so there's that much at stake. You know, maybe Switzerland aside, and maybe Turkey, as you said, who potentially thought that, you know, for Switzerland, I didn't know it would have been their first semi-final ever in a major tournament, so it was huge.
I thought Switzerland's performance was really funny.
Yeah.
In that they were on top in mad periods of the game when you wouldn't have predicted to be on top.
It felt as well, a couple of people I spoke to, it felt like that it got to this stage, and I'd watched Switzerland in one of the early rounds, and they were really good and they were really exciting, and it almost like they got to this game and they just went, oh, there's so much at stake that almost you don't want to lose the game, and it felt a bit like that over all quarterfinals, and I can see the two semi-finals being exactly the same. I really can, because I mean, France have not looked great and are in the semi-final stage. Spain, you would say, out of the last four, were the ones who would probably have played the best and look probably, you know, maybe favourites, but even then, you know, if the game goes anything like the Belgium-France game, then potentially it could be a bit of a stalemate. But we'll see.
With them, Sean, I think there's slight differences in terms of whether or not people are getting what they've come for. So I think in the end, I think one of the things that changes in the England performance, I think that the English found themselves at least getting what a little bit more of this is sort of how we thought the game would go, and we'll attack our moments, certainly in the first half of the match, and then in the start of the second half. I think that they had an element of that. I think the French have had that all the way through. This is just sort of who we are. He's dead interested in his post-match comments, I think, Deschamps, where afterwards he says, don't blame the players, I'm a defensive coach. Just basically says, this is what I am, so this is what you're getting, and this is the way it's going to go. The only problem is, and it doesn't have to be entertainment, don't get me wrong, but they're not half moving themselves away from, other than the fact that everyone looks to be having a lovely time around the tournament, away from being adverts for, this is why we commit to the international game for years to come.
It is difficult. I mean, the World Cup in Qatar is obviously much better timed because of when it was mid-season, whereas you know, Bielsa's comments I thought were fascinating, and you know, to expand on that, it looks like everyone is just looking at media in terms of Netflix, and they're trying to almost make football these massive box sets that just go on forever, and now you're starting to have people question, well, where's the quality?
Yeah.
And the other thing you've seen over the last 20, 25 years, accelerated club football overtaking international football at a whole new level. I mean, look at the quality of coaches in this tournament. Nagelsmann, probably by far, clear. Montella, Resurrection, the rest. What jobs are they getting?
Yeah.
Realistically. And
well, I've got
even look at the ones in the semi-finals. By that, I mean, by the way, if they're free agents in club football, where are they ending up? So I think I've got a lot less sympathy for England on this, but you've got a lot of clubs where they'll have some players who are ingrained in, top club sides playing almost Guardiola Klopp football, and then they'll have other players that might be more journeymen and people who are used to different things. So to put them together with very little training ground time in what is a knockout tournament, and there's a reason why, apart from the fact Liverpool just didn't have a good enough squad, think of Gerard Houllier's success in cup tournaments versus league form. And ultimately, if you want to win cup tournaments, no mistake football, be great at set pieces, do not allow counter-attacks, defend deep. And then if you can have some pace on the counter-attack, you're going to be hard to knock out of a tournament, any tournament. And if you've got a bit of magic higher up the field, you can go a long way. So if you did your Deschamps, and you can kind of understand that approach. If it's, you've got to go far and probably win it if that's what you're going to do. But he'd probably say, if we play brilliant football and I get knocked out in the last 16, like, am I getting an open top bus parade? No, of course I'm not. You guys want me to win. So, and he's probably a bit unlucky as well in that, with the Mbappe injury. Look, Mbappe's got, well, Dan will be better on this, but France have got much bigger concerns anyway right now than the Euros, or certainly recently. Mbappe's got the injury, other things on his mind, lack of sleep, other issues there. I mean, one of their main attacking talents has been almost rendered redundant, hasn't he? So I think with England, I think it's a different problem in that he does have a squad of players that can play in a Guardiola Klopp way, but he doesn't want to coach that way. And he's also got the England thing of, I just want to put all the big hitters that the media like me to put in together, and that's why it doesn't look right. You can't play the Guardiola Klopp way with a goalkeeper who is a Sabutio keeper, who can't pass, can't play, doesn't want to play high, with a striker that just wants to moose around a bit and drop deep and not high press. If there's an argument for me that you take neither to the tournament, but there's not a world where Gareth Southgate decides to do that. So that's why you're not going to see any. I do think Gareth Southgate has very little excuses for them not approaching this in more of a Guardiola Klopp type way. And if you're looking at it international wise, more Spain-like. But that's not what he wants to do. So, and I also think the way they diluted the Euros always used to be a bit more exciting than the World Cup because you get the big country clashes, wouldn't you? Much earlier.
But the flip side of that, though, Sean, is the smaller countries have been more fun. So that's the, Georgia were great to watch. Romania offered you a certain something.
They've been more, Turkey. But I think they've been more fun because it's almost like how we used to watch international tournaments, in that because we, certainly from my point of view, through our own ignorance, I don't know that much about their players. I'm not that bored of watching them, if you like. And with all due respect to them teams, they defend deep and counter-attack with pace, and they're a bit of fun. And they've got little to lose. That's the other thing, that they can get knocked out whenever and it doesn't matter. So they can just leave everything on the pitch, play with real aggression and tempo. And they've got to have that unity, because otherwise they've got zero chance, and they could be real whipping boys. So I think all they've done is defend deep and counter-attack with loads of pace against teams that are going to dominate the ball against them.
There is, you mentioned Mendes before, Dan, every now and again you'll see a player or a couple of players sort of grab a game and look really, really impressive. I thought Mendes was excellent in there. I think there's been 2 or 3 of the Spain players, particularly lads who play in the wide areas, I think, who found themselves being able to impress during the tournament. I thought as a unit Germany played well. I thought Wirtz made a massive difference when he came on in that game. Gakpo's clearly had a good tournament. For any reasonable observer would say that he's clearly had a good tournament. Is there anything that's impressed you separate to the footballers themselves? Anything that sort of grabbed your attention? You thought, oh, that's a bit different, or is it at this point just sort of ploughing on?
I think some of the transitions from previous squad to new squad that have been going on. A few of the teams are like a little bit in between at the moment. I know that they ended up getting knocked out the other day, but I think that Switzerland have been doing that quite well. They used to be, about like 8-9 years ago, they were always a top seed in the rankings. I think they just got a few favourable draws in qualifying, and that meant they were always top seed, and then that helps with all the subsequent ones. So they've always been in the tournaments, but that like generation of players that they had before, for the last few years has struggled. They've done a lot less well in qualifiers and things like that. The record and ranking really dropped off. But they've had players like Ndoye this time, that Yakin brought in and kind of built like a new team. And the key being team. They had a system that really maximised the level of player that they had. If you just went through 1 to 11, the team that England picked versus the one that Switzerland picked, they had no right to be level with them after 120 minutes. But they maximised everything good that they had about themselves, and as you say, were able to be on top in portions of the game, like towards the end of normal time, for example, where you would expect them to just be sitting in and trying to hold on and get to penalty and so on and so forth. So I think some of the lesser known coaches have done a really, really good job. Sean is right to say like Nagelsmann is probably the most impressive one overall. Spalletti as well, but he's only been in the job 5 minutes because Mancini left last minute. But people like Yakin and Sanyol and a few of the others, I think have really figured out not just like a way of playing tactically, and it might not be that elaborate, but it's worked to a degree of success to get them as far as they have, but also a way of convincing their players.
I think Sanyol especially on this, yeah.
Like you can really hate these, and just telling them that in a psychological way is one thing, but convincing them of and this is how we do it. So if you're just able to implement that, we're going to do really well here. Is really, really difficult. So I think there's a simultaneous thing going on where I'm really disappointed in what I think are the shit coaches of the bigger teams who to at least a small degree could maybe do with just like being a little braver in some games compared to the ones of the smaller sides who are not just combining are not just using bravery to take on the bigger sides, but I've actually been really smart about it, and I've got some players who are not necessarily used to playing at that level doing a few really clever things. So I think that idea of what constitutes a good international coach and how do you do that job well has been made pretty clear throughout the tournament, and I think maybe some of the federations who will no doubt be looking for a new coach in the next couple of months after this tournament could do with heeding that.
And Mendes was boss.
Honestly, so good. He played really well for PSG, but was missing quite a bit of it. And yeah, just seeing a player that you don't necessarily watch all that regularly do fun things in a game is pretty much all you're looking for from an international tournament as a relatively neutral observer. Is what's going to be a laugh in this, and he seemed to be on a one-man crusade to make that game in some way interesting, and I entirely respect that.
Something they might have to look at it the other way. What you said, what has impressed you? Something that I'm not sure they're a million miles off having to have a look at is clever tactical fouling by the entire outfielders. Because I wonder if at like UEFA FIFA level they're going to have a think about this. Uruguay, Brazil was 42 fouls. England averaging 15 fouls against them per game, and this in Germany, Spain there were 32 fouls, which is the most in the tournament. Now that's pretty much a foul every 120 seconds of football. So if they're going to look, Bielsa's comments are ultimately, you're all just looking at this immediate thing, you're wringing out the flannel, and you're going to wonder where all the spectators have gone at some point and where all the good footballers are and why you're not watching a quality product. But if you're going to look at it that way, there's a lot of dead time, there's a lot of momentum being broken up, which in knockout football, fine. But I do wonder, this is the Guardiola element of stopping counter-attacks. But watching games of football where you could be having 42 fouls during the context of it, where I'm not sure what the solution is to this, but what I do know is, as a product to watch and enjoy, that isn't great unless you maybe Sam Allardyce.
Or you're into a tactical foul. But even there, even I was finding that at times. I thought Spain-Germany was. I mean, I was more annoyed by the shots outside the box, but my God, could they foul each other? They had a really strong plan as to how and when and why they were going to foul each other. The thing that's most annoyed me about this tournament is on more than one occasion I've had a lot of sympathy for Anthony Taylor, and that goes against everything I stand for. But what's funny?
We all knew he'd do this. What's funny with Anthony Taylor, and we know he does it, he basically lets everything go for the first 5 minutes. And I reckon Pedri's telling everyone, bloody hell, this is like prison rules. Like, this is like, there's no rules footy here. And then later on, he'll be booking people for nothing, and they're like, hang on a minute. Like, I thought you set the bar in the first 10 minutes, and that's the issue that they've got. Like, refereeing in that way is a problem as well.
Go on.
No,
you look primed. Sorry.
Again, the extra times of the whole, like, I think our cup's now the same, isn't it? Or one of them.
The League Cup doesn't have it.
And again, it's an age-old debate, isn't it? Whether it's going straight through, but it's just
Spain don't help when they score a winner in the 119th minute.
That's it. That's exactly what it is, because obviously they've completely devoid any.
That was a good extra time as well.
It was good, and there was more than just
really good save.
The other two have been. I mean, I think Switzerland had a half chance. The other two have been pretty dire, haven't they? So that's the other thing to take away. Are they going to look at that?
The Swiss couldn't sprint. They couldn't sprint. I was watching it. No one, even the lads who come on, weirdly, just no one had to sprint in them. It was very, very odd. It was
strange, wasn't it? Because you think a little bit of freshness, but it didn't seem to transpire.
Who do you think's going to win it?
Spain. I do. I think Spain have shown enough. I think they'll get past France, and then I think either if England or Holland, whoever wins that, I think Spain will be too strong for them.
France. Before the Germany-Spain game, we did review extra, and we thought there was a fear that they might leave the game or the tournament behind. In that, you look at the suspensions, you're going to see Jesus Navas v Mbappe, most likely.
Yep.
Spain already have a weak defence. If there's one reason why they wouldn't win the tournament, you go, Rodri's got a lot on. If Spain are going to do it, I would say that Fabian Ruiz and Rodri need to have 2 games of their lives, because I don't think behind them they've got adequate protection to see this through.
Percentages wise, I reckon most likely is probably England, because I think they're most likely to reach the final. I think they'll beat the Netherlands, who I've not been impressed by at all, really. But I think it'd be really funny if France won the whole thing by not scoring a goal. So I think that's my favourite outcome at this stage.
My favourite outcome, I think I want France to win, at least because the players took the political stance they took and was really brave and has been rewarded, thankfully.
Also, as well as the bravery, look really articulate about it and really intelligent about it.
Yeah, so I think that's why I'd like France to win it at this point. I think I now support France off the back of it. What's my sucker is, if England win it, is I think they'll knight Southgate, and by November he'll be Man United manager, which means they'll have 5 Sirs involved at Manchester United. So there'll be Sir Gareth, Sir Jim, Sir Dave, Sir Bobby and Sir Alex, all at Manchester United. And I think it's just right and proper that Manchester United is a football club that exists on its fucking knees. So I'm very much in favour of that. So that'll be the thing that'll offer me real sucker, is the idea of Sir Gareth rocking up as an inept Manchester United manager in November. That's what I'm in it for at this point of proceedings. Moving on to what could have been, in one instance at least. We'll do Adrian first. I mean, let's be clear about this, Paul. Liverpool offered him another deal. He's had a couple of deals offered. I think it's just worth pointing out that we forget that football clubs at times are workplaces. Yeah. I don't think any of us had that much interest in the idea of him starting a Liverpool game after 2020. The very last one before the pandemic hit. He struggles in. There'd been a couple before then. But it looked like he was important to everyone, certainly in that sector of the pitch, involved in all the pictures, all the hugs. His own final video he did, I thought, was really warm. You just sort of get the impression he was a team man. Yeah, he well liked, obviously. But I mean, some obviously fan bases can be ludicrous at times and overly critical. But I think in the times he had to play for us, and obviously when Alisson got injured in the league winning season, and obviously he won the Super Cup for us. I think that they were his highlights on the pitch, but he's clearly been a huge part of the squad. And as you say, he seems to be a really likeable guy around the club. His video was very warm, made me smile a lot.
He was very, very passionate about it. I just love the way he came across. And if that's the type of person he's been at the club, then you can see why, he will be missed. But again, it is a workplace, like you've just said, and he'll probably think, well, I do want to do a little bit of work rather than just sort of sitting off every day. So so fair play to him. Again, one of those who you look back and he'll bring a smile to your face.
Yeah, really good guy. When he's on the pre-season flights and stuff like that, he's not watching box sets, like he's reading books on investments and mental health and growth and things like that. And you get the vibe from everything you hear from him, and even from that video. But I think why they're renewing the deal is what he's like around the place. Over the time, you lose your Lallanas, your Milners, your Adrians, just having senior people like that are really good human beings that are invested in that high professionalism in and around the training ground, especially when you've got so many youngsters that we want to come through and blood in that sense. You can't really have too many of them around, and I think ignoring why are we signing Adrian again, what if he plays for us, it's not about that, is it? It's about what you get in and around the active training centre.
There's the moment when he signs, he comes in, first and foremost, and it's worth remembering, Mignolet was expected to be part of the squad. It's quite a late move that he's going to go to Bruges, and Liverpool end up getting Adrian. I think there's a thing where it's easy to... I think one of the things that's sort of been lost in 2019-20, and part of it is because of the pandemic, but I think it's also part because they win 26 out of 27. There is a thing where I think everyone always feels like, they were inevitably going to win that league. Whereas I think that if genuinely first game, and this isn't really even talking the other fella down, but if Alisson goes down injured and we all look at the sidelines and it's Mignolet and he's coming on, because you've got so much experience in Mignolet, everyone would be like, oh God, we're in for it now. Whereas that then compounded by the Super Cup win, everyone's right behind him. There's a real desire that goes above and beyond just wanting your team to do well. Everyone wants to see him do well. And I think at times the new just helps with that. And I think you get to see that at the start of that season. I think he plays a massive part in winning that league. He really does.
He did, and I think one of the other key ones was that he played that Southampton game, which was directly after the Super Cup, in which he'd been booted to the floor by someone who ran on the pitch afterwards. Yeah. And there was a real worry that Andy Lorigan was going to have to play, who was 48 or something, and had been on the bench at Rotherham the year before, hadn't he? Adrian ended up being fit enough and kicked one right at Danny Ings, and it went in the net towards the end, but Liverpool were 2 goals ahead, so it was fine. But that was really key, and I think the Mignolet comparison works a little bit. I think if Mignolet had have kicked that at Danny Ings and it had gone in, I think the next few weeks might have been really difficult for him. I think that might have really got to Mignolet's head. Mignolet was at times for Liverpool a competent goalkeeper who saved things well, but when he had a bit of a rick, it would become a patch of poor form. I think psychologically he struggled sometimes to be the Liverpool goalkeeper. Adrian seems to just not give a fuck. And there's loads of value in not giving a fuck sometimes, especially when you're only going to play what is a relatively small portion of a season. So we just got back on with it and then played pretty well after that, as far as I can recall. And I do think whatever your view of him is, or certainly people that I've ever had a conversation about it with, it hinges quite a bit on whether you went to that Super Cup final. I did, and had an amazing time. Like one of my favourite trips following Liverpool, it was amazing. Local supporters there and stuff were brilliant. Loads of people went over. And that's like a great memory of following Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool. Like when we've done all the stuff looking back on his time over the past few years, that's the trophy that no one ever really mentions, and I get why and everything. But I loved it, and therefore my abiding memory of him is him making those saves and then Klopp doing the voice.
My favourite thing about that is that when he does the voice that is unrecognisable as the voice, and then feels he has to explain the joke just in case Des Kelly doesn't get it. It's one of Klopp's most dad moments. Yeah. He does the joke and then feels it's a really straightforward joke here, but feels just in case I best explain this.
Why aren't you laughing, Des?
And ultimately then in the later years, what more do you really want from your backup goalkeeper than ultimately being someone that people seem to like, and isn't much of a nuisance really, because he wasn't playing. It was his last game, that Preston game, where Origi scored that flick. He played really well that night as well. He made a few saves. Liverpool went up to scratch in the first half really. So when he played for Liverpool, he predominantly played pretty well. And from a second going into third choice goalkeeper, I think that and having a trophy winning moment are about the absolute best that you could ask for.
Thiago was a bit of a different story, Paul, and I want to do this both for me, it's an entirely positive story, Thiago. It's just got the wistfulness attached, because I think he more than contributes. I think without what Thiago does in the run of the 2020-2021 season, we wouldn't have made the Champions League. I think what he does throughout, but especially the back end of the 2021-2022 season. By the way, Andy told me that Adrian designed his own gloves, and I wanted to mention that. I think it's dead interesting. 2021-2022 season, in the back end of that, but especially, I think throughout, I think he's genuinely excellent. I would argue he's the only one of the older crew who genuinely holds it together before his injury in 2022-2023. That doesn't say he plays brilliantly every game, but he holds it together. I think that's contributing. You know what I mean? For me, that's contributing. I want to be clear about that. But the thing is, when he really did contribute, you saw how incredible he was. And there's a bit of you that just wishes we'd have had 50 more games of it.
And I don't know whether it's that, why there will be people who will listen to this who will say, oh, no, he's not had, he could have been this, could have been that. I think because he could play so well, and he could literally dictate the play. Everything about him. He was a bit of a, we described Virgil, Rolls-Royce footballer. He was like that. His performance at Wembley, in the Charity Shield against City was fantastic. He ran the show, didn't he? And I think that's why, I say, people listening or anyone who feels that Thiago's time at Liverpool wasn't a success, that's why they said it, because they know how good he was and what we saw and what we got to see. You wanted more of it. And then unfortunately, I say, your summary of how he played and when he played, it was fantastic. That was, I couldn't fault that was right in all those times. That's when he literally came to the fore. I think it is. You will look back and you'll go. I remember being at the last game and he comes out to his ovation, and I kind of remember getting a little bit sort of choked up. It was one of those days anyway, wasn't it? But thinking, do you know what? I've heard that song go around this place, and it could have been so much better. And I think for him, he'll probably look back as well. And obviously, it's really frustrating when you're injured as a player. But I think that's where the whole, when you feel, what has he been? How was his time at Liverpool? For me, it's a success. It's just a shame. Obviously, he was such impacted by the injuries.
Dan, it was a privilege to watch him at times, but it was a privilege to watch him in a number of different ways. He was never quite the footballer I thought we were getting, and again, this is almost purely as a compliment, in that I thought the thing he'll do is he'll come in and he'll calm everything down, and it transpired one of the reasons he wanted to sign was he wanted things to be madder at every opportunity. Loved the tackle, wanted to feel involved. I thought he loved the crowd, and I think that you can and that's not, it's sort of neutral as to whether or not you're a good player, the extent to which you love the crowd, I think. But I think part of why he signs for Liverpool is I think he really wanted to be part of the Liverpool thing. In the end, the frustration about his last 12 months is he didn't get to be part of it at all. But I thought he was really, really committed to the idea of it being a game of emotions, which felt, if you'd have said to me beforehand, would have felt unlikely given the extent to which his technical prowess was the thing that you thought would rule the day.
Yeah, I think certainly in terms of like his personality as a footballer, you could see the Brazilian in him.
Yes.
I think what you're saying about what you expected of him, and I think that's perfectly valid, is what you think of a Spanish player, certainly a modern Spanish player. But I think that kind of mix of his upbringing is where that love of the crowd and wanting to feel part of something collective kind of came from. He played extremely well, didn't he, when he came on at Chelsea in that first substitute appearance when he came on at half time. For months after that, he looked awful when he first got here. Not because he wasn't trying. If anything, he was trying a bit too hard, and it was because they were playing him as a holding midfielder, because Fabinho was having to do centre half so much. Henderson ended up doing it as well. They were playing him as a six on his own, and it wasn't working. He played deep for Bayern before, but there was always someone next to him. I think sometimes it was Kimmich, it was often Goretzka, sometimes Javi Martinez, etc. And he just looked really lost. And then in the build-up to a game that he was excellent in, that West Brom game where Alisson scored the header, they started playing him further forward. He started playing on the left-hand side of the midfield, higher up, and it just seemed to unleash him, give him a load of confidence, allow him to concentrate more on being on the ball than being off it. That's not to say that he was like bad off the ball by any means, but I think when he was asked to basically do it all on his own, he was really struggling, understandably so. And the thing that I enjoyed watching him do most, obviously, he'd spray the ball 30-40 yards often, and he scored some lovely goals as well, but is that sort of right angle, shifts his hip around in a mad way pass, when he's not even looking where it's going, but it doesn't just reach its destination, it reaches it like pristinely. It's exactly the yard and a half in front of the player that the player would want. He's just able to control and manipulate a football probably better than anyone I've seen play for Liverpool.
Possibly,
I think so. And ultimately, it's maybe about par for what you'd have thought before he got here. In that when he played, a lot of the time it was mesmerising to watch him, but he didn't play that much, and ultimately there's not a ton to show for it in terms of like. We won an FA Cup and a League Cup in his time. We may have come really close to some other things, but it wasn't quite there. But that doesn't mean that like it was a waste of his time or ours. You still got to see an absolutely incredible footballer play, and I think that influence he had in a more emotional way is one of the key things to remember. It wasn't just there were some really nice passes and stuff like that. It was he fucking cared. Like he really wanted to be successful with Liverpool and to feel like he was a part of it with all the people around him. And again, given he's not in control of his own injuries and what happened to a couple of Liverpool teams in that time when it was really hard as well, I don't think you could probably reasonably ask for more from him than that.
There's what happens to Liverpool teams in that time, which I think is an excellent point. Sean mentioned before about the idea that he was having to play as a holding midfielder when he came back from the first injury after he got at Goodison Park, because Fabinho and Henderson were having to take turns at centre back. Also, just a couple of sides disintegrating around him to an extent as well, which didn't help and increase the load on him. For me, in the season just gone, if there was one decision that you'd point at that you wish you could click your fingers and change, and listen, he might have got a second injury anyway at some sort of later point, but I think in hindsight, but also in the moment, he didn't need to be thrown on at the Emirates at that time. I think from looking at it, it just felt to me as though you were asking him to come on and save the day in a really odd environment, and maybe in the end, one of the things that you could look back at and say is maybe could we have cared for him a little bit more, but did circumstance undermine that?
Yeah, he's been really unlucky, hasn't he? And I think following on from Dan's point there, it just shows you what a fantastic attitude he's got, because I reckon there'd be a load of players that would have refused, in that there were rumours last summer that hip injury might be really, really bad. I don't remember any rumours that he'd retire or anything, but I do remember things that this is a real, real bad one. Like, you're not going to see him this side of Christmas kind of thing. And when he does eventually get back, if you remember, he has that week in training where it seems that even like Jurgen and all the players couldn't stop themselves from talking about it, that he was just unreal. And then we've obviously got a bit of an injury and health crisis going into the Arsenal game, and he's not in the original squad. And then Szoboszlai goes down ill. So they call Thiago up. And then next thing, he's probably been told to go and warm up, and he's being asked to go on. Now, at any point in there, he'd be, if it was a plan, he would have been in the original squad, is my view. So I'm guessing they've said, look, you've got a clean bill of health in terms of the healing of the injury, but in terms of your rehabilitation, we're in the process of going through that rehab. And if you're Jurgen, you're probably going, well, I've been told you're fit, in inverted commas, and I've just watched you in training, and it's wow. And I need 10 minutes from you. And I watched what you did in training. And they're just difficult calls. It's like the Jota one at Burnley, when it was kind of afterwards, Jurgen said, didn't he, the medical team were a bit and ahhing, and I thought it was worth a go, and it paid dividends, and they're the risks that sometimes you have to take. And like you say, it's a shame, because we'll never know whether he would have just, with the news we now know, would he have just broken down again within minutes, possibly. But when you think of the international break and McAllister just dropping off a cliff at that point in time, like what you'd have given for Thiago at Old Trafford in that like if we were going to get half an hour from him, that's one of them, isn't it? And in that running, he would have been amazing. I mean, look at the when he signs, when he gets injured, we're top of the league, I think, or second. We're in a title race. Yeah. He comes back. There's then this complete mess that he has to get involved in. But from March 21 to the end of 2022, Klopp's brilliant and goes, right, Fabinho and Thiago, you're playing together, basically. And Thiago has a bit of free rein to progress further forward. But in that window, the pair of them really worked well together. And, Thiago and Fabinho's partnership were instrumental in getting us in the Champions League. Like, we could have signed anyone other than Thiago, and I don't think we made Champions League that year. What did we sign him for? 20 million. I know the wages and the whole package, but we could have signed. He was supreme in that period. And then in the 22 season, it's the hamstring injury against Wolves. Like, he fights his way back for the Champions League final. If he doesn't get injured there, we win the Champions League for me. He was such a massive loss. And you look at the way the game plays out, and then the other decisions that Jurgen then has to make in the midfield on the back of that, which you can argue now that probably got wrong, really. But the loss of Thiago for that was massive. And like you say, he's just had bad luck as well, not just with the injuries, with the state of the squad and the team when he's been available.
Okay. Now coming up is John Gibbons speaking to Esme Smithson from the Brain charity.
And it is John Gibbons, and I'm joined in our video studio by Esme Smithson from the Brain charity. Esme, thanks so much for coming in to see us. Appreciate it.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's amazing what you're doing to support all these charities around Liverpool.
Well, of course, and you are a Liverpool charity, and we want to talk about that and focus on the amazing work that you guys are doing before we talk about something specific you've got going on at the moment. But first of all, tell us a little bit more about the Brain charity, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so at the Brain charity, we support people with neurological conditions. So neurological conditions are anything that affects the brain, the spine, or the nervous system. And there's over 600 that we know about. Neurological conditions actually affect more people than heart disease and cancer combined. Wow. So that's about 1 in 6 people in the UK. We're the only charity in the UK that support people no matter what the condition is. So we're the only charity supporting every single neurological condition.
Incredible. So we're lucky to have you in Liverpool, I guess. Just up the road from here, not too far at all.
Absolutely. So we actually developed out of the Walton Centre, which, if for anyone who doesn't know, is an incredible hospital here in Liverpool, and it's a world leader in neurology, neuroscience, neurosurgery. And in the early 90s, their medical director realised that they were seeing patients, they could give a diagnosis, they could give medication, they could perform surgery. And then they sort of left the hospital, and their life might have been completely turned upside down by a diagnosis, by a brain injury. And there was just nothing in the community there to support them. And that's really sort of how the Brain charity developed.
And presumably because it is such a wide range, it's a wide range of people, wide range of ages, wide range of problems and issues that people are having that you're supporting every day.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, 600 conditions. It's a lot. And some of them you've probably heard of, or you might have unfortunately been affected in your own life or in your, or family members. Conditions like dementia, stroke, brain injury, like I said. But there's actually quite a lot of really rare conditions. So there's a condition called Alice in Wonderland syndrome, and it affects perception. So items appear smaller than they actually are, hence the name. There's only actually 200 instances of this recorded in medical literature. But we support someone who has that condition.
Wow.
So if you get diagnosed with a condition like that one, which is so rare, there's so little out there on it, it can be really isolating and scary to know sort of what your future looks like. We don't claim to be experts in all 600 conditions. I don't think anyone or any organisation could be. But if you come to us, we're here, we're a community, and we will provide you with the support that you need to reach your potential, to get your life sort of back on track, to rebuild it, or just to have a happier life, a longer life, and a healthier one.
So you're helping lots of people, it's as you say, over 600 conditions, but I presume that's a lot of people here in Merseyside. So how do you get the funding to do what you're doing every day? Yeah,
so I'm from the fundraising team, and we have quite a diverse range of ways that we get funding. First of all, within the centre, so we're actually based on Norton Street, just off London Road.
Yeah.
And our centre has meeting rooms for hire. We also have a cafe, which does have the best lemon drizzle cake in the city centre, innit?
Oh, I mean, I can't believe we're doing it in our studio.
I know, right?
You didn't mention the lemon drizzle. Next time we're doing it.
Next time, I'll bring some down next time. We also provide neurodiversity training to businesses, and we've been doing that all across the globe. We've had American businesses from all over the world who've come to us to get our training. From a fundraising perspective, we apply to a lot of grants, to a lot of trust makers. That's a really difficult landscape at the moment.
Of course.
I'm sure other charities will have told you the number of grants is shrinking, the pots of money is shrinking, but the need is just growing and growing.
Yeah.
And so many charities need that money at the moment that it's really hard to get it all the places it needs to go. We're really lucky to have a few corporate partners who do absolutely amazing work, businesses that all sort of club together as and fundraise for us and work with their customers and raise awareness of the issues that we support. We also do community fundraising and challenge fundraising. So we've got people who are much, much braver than I am, sort of jumping out of planes and running marathons. We've got an amazing guy, actually. His name is Archie Whitfield, and he next year will be running to every Premier League stadium in the country. So he's starting at Newcastle, he's ending at Arsenal. He's told me he's most looking forward to the Liverpool-Everton leg because for obvious reasons it's the shortest. And that's in memory of his dad, who sadly passed away but was a massive Arsenal fan. But people who just do these sort of amazing feats because they believe in us and they believe in the work that we're doing.
Yeah, no, it is absolutely fantastic. If there's ever sponsored lemon drizzle cake eat, I'll be more likely to be up for that than running between stadiums. But it is, it is vital for organisations like yourselves, though, that the people are sort of willing to step up, and that might be, companies that they're looking to have a charity of the month or something like that, or people who just want to do a little bit of fundraising. Like you say, they might have had someone who they know who's been affected, by some of the people that you help, or a variety of reasons. But, like you say, with funding so hard to get from applications and things like that, normal people willing to step up and support must be absolutely vital for you to keep doing the amazing work that you are.
Yeah, 100%. And we've got such a wonderful community, not only of the people we support, but the people who support us. And it's just a really lovely, warm atmosphere in the building and sort of around us, sort of willing us on and helping us to do the work that we need to do.
So at the moment, you've got something specific going on. It's centred around the Euros, which we're all watching at the moment. We're all enjoying it, and you guys have got some, fundraising ideas or targets around that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're currently running a campaign, a fundraising campaign, and it's called the Neuro Euros. We basically just want to harness that excitement that happens whenever the Euros are on, and try channel it into some fundraising for a good cause. So originally we were suggesting between the Euros date, so the 14th of June to the 14th of July, but we've got such an amazing summer of sport coming up with Wimbledon and the Olympics and the Paralympics, especially for us. We thought, let's just keep it going all through the summer. So we're basically asking people to take on any kind of football-based fundraiser. So you could be hosting a five-a-side match. You could have a sort of dress down Friday, but instead of dressing down, everyone donates and comes in their football shirt. Although I guess you might need to be careful of any rivalries you might have going on there. But, it's all in good fun.
If you've got an international workplace, though, you can have fun with it.
Very good point. It could be a football bake sale, either football-themed cupcakes and things, or you could, again, take it international, do recipes from the countries that are taking part in the Euros, like German apple cake. Basically anything that's football themed, and you can raise money for the Brain Charity. So our target is £5,000. That's our goal to reach across the summer. And we've chosen that amount because it could fund one of our areas that we work in is mental health support for people with neurological conditions, and we have a counselling service. And that counselling service is completely free. Counselling is quite expensive to access, or you're stuck on a very long waiting list. And unfortunately, people with neurological conditions are twice as likely as the general public to have a mental health condition such as anxiety or depression. With £5,000 that we're hopefully going to raise through the Neuro Euros, we could fund 25 full courses of counselling for 25 people with neurological conditions.
That's incredible, isn't it? With that amount of money, just how far you can make that stretch. And I guess that's one of the things about a sort of a local charity is that, you can make a little go a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's amazing because it's sort of funds raised by the local community and it goes straight back into the local community as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. So if people want to find out more, if people want to go online and find out more about the charity itself or the Neuro Euros, that's the first time I've ever tried. I've typed it to you, but they say it, Neuro Euros. How do they do that?
Yeah, so our website is thebraincharity.org.uk. You can get in touch directly with the fundraising team if you want to get involved in the Neuro Euros, fundraising at thebraincharity.org.uk. And then we're on socials, absolutely everywhere, at The Brain Charity. So Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it these days. Search The Brain Charity, you'll find us. And our centre is open to the public, the cafe is open to the public. So 9 a.m. to 5 p.m, pop in, have some lemon drizzle cake with us.
I mean, we're all going to do that. I'll see you there. Best of luck with it. Do let us know if people have sort of, interesting ideas and do share them with us, and we'll be quite happy to share them. I'd love to know what people sort of get up to in the name of football to raise money for you guys. But best of luck with it. It's fantastic what you're doing every day. And yeah, thanks for coming down.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you to Esme for coming in and spending the time with John. We're going to end this one with the Schoolyard game. We haven't done one since 2016. We've actually done well on the show. I think it's been an interesting conversation, but I promised it, so we're going to deliver it regardless. The way this works is you've got to imagine every single footballer who falls into a category up against a wall who's ever played for Liverpool. And from there, you get to pick what would be your 11. Paul will face Dan for this. Me and Sean will have our say on the way through. It might be that someone decides to give someone a hand as we go. I'm not going to toss a coin. I'm going to let Paul go first. So they need to have played in the Euros and been a Premier League player for Liverpool. Paul, who are you going for first?
Okay. If I get one wrong, as well, is that me like?
No, you're not out. It's just
okay.
I might let Dan have the next pick if you see what I mean.
Just to clarify, when we pick the players, are we getting the version of them that was at Liverpool, or are we getting them at their peak?
At their peak.
Okay. So I'm gonna go, and I think he played. I'm gonna go Pepe.
Reina. He's got the goalkeeper. He's got that sorted. Yeah, he did. He gets on in one game.
Okay, I will have Steven Gerrard.
Okay. Excellent stuff.
Hang on, so we haven't got to go order of...
No.
Oh,
no, but I would have picked Reina, so you've still done the right thing.
Yeah, I know the four goalkeepers, and trust me, you've done well.
Okay.
I was almost not going to play this game off the back of the fact I checked the goalkeepers before, and I was like, oh my God, who is there?
Okay, so obviously I've got to go Verge.
Okay.
Fernando Torres.
He's got a front two.
Yeah. I'm going to go Xavi Alonso.
I will have Michael Owen.
Oh, okay. Peak Michael Owen.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go Robbie Fowler.
Fowler does get on in Euro 96.
Trent Alexander-Arnold.
Marcus Babbel.
Okay, Marcus Babbel.
I'll have Andy Robertson.
Didi Hamann.
I'm not 100% if he plays in the Euros.
Surely Euro 2000 he would have played.
He must
I think you're fine to say yes to that.
Okay, yeah.
I will have Steve McManaman.
Patrick Berger.
Yep, definitely plays in the Euros. Like it.
Do we think Carragher played in one?
We know he took a pen.
Did he?
Takes the pen against Portugal.
That was the World Cup.
I'm certain he gets on in the Euros.
I reckon he probably did, but I'm not certain. Do you want to check?
I'll check while you're having a second. You might want to...
I love the way no one's going near the 80s here. Are they?
Well, it's Premier League. Yeah, Premier League.
I would have been full on foul.
I'll tell you what, just put Agger down and we'll check Carragher.
One second. He represents Liverpool at Euro 2004, so you can have Carragher.
Okay. I need a left back, so I'm going to go John Arne Riise.
I think that might be one where I don't know if Norway would qualify.
Did he not?
I don't think Norway have been in the Euros for a long time.
John Rees, let me have a little look as we go through. I mean, it would help if we had this information to hand in some way, shape or form, but international career. He made the only international tournament appearance of his career at Euro 2000.
Well done.
Excellent stuff. Okay. Dan, you've got 7 so far. You'll be an 8th pick.
I will have Scale, please. No, sorry, I haven't got Agger, have I? Give me Agger, sorry.
Agger, okay.
Okay, I'm going to go Daniel Sturridge.
Oh, I forgot about Sturridge. That's a really good one.
Sturridge is great. Sturridge is really, really good. Okay.
Can I have Lallana, please? I think he played in 2016. He went to 2014 World Cup.
Yeah, I think he plays.
Jordan is nodding at me, so yeah.
Excellent stuff. Jordan liked this game, actually. We should have got Jordan to play it. He loves all these. Okay.
Yeah, I needed a centre half, don't I? So I'm going to go Degsy.
Yeah, must have played for Croatia in
100%,
Euros, yeah.
Loads.
Okay.
What have I got? I've not got a goalkeeper, have I? So I'll do that at the end.
You do that at the end. You've got 9. Hang on, so we'll go through what you've got. You've got your back four is Trent Alexander-Arnold right back, unless you're playing him in midfield. Carragher, Agger and Robertson. And then your midfielders, as it stands, is some combination of Gerrard, Lallana and McManaman. And you've got Torres and Owen up top.
I think you've only got 2 keepers that you can pick from.
Neil says 4.
There's 4.
And 3 of them are crap by the sounds of it.
There's 4.
There's 4, yeah,
Okay,
I'll go through them in a minute.
I'm gonna take peak Paul Ince.
Oh, that's incredible. Okay, he's taken Peak Ince. Oh, wow. No one saw Peak Paul Ince coming.
The only other sentiment I could think of was Emre Can. So I've gone Peak Ince.
So you've got your... Okay.
So I need a keeper after that. But
Yeah.
I'm going 4-4-2, by the way.
You both are, trust me.
Okay, yeah,
There's no fucking moves here, lads.
So I think I need a right winger. I'm going to go Vladdy.
Okay. Okay. Yep. So Vladdy off the left, Berger off the right, and you've gone from there. And you've got Fowler and Sturridge up front.
Yeah.
Pepe Reina in goal, Babel right back, Lovren, Van Dijk, John Arne Riise, Xabi Alonso, Didier Mann, Patrick Berger, Vladimir Smicha, Robbie Fowler, and Daniel Sturridge.
Yeah.
Did Dudek play?
No.
I'm not sure Poland
weren't in one when he was there.
Did Mignolet play?
No.
Okay.
I'd punish you, but what's the fucking point? I can't say it's his go again now, can I?
Let me keep going. Did Vesterveld must have played in Euro 2000?
Don't think so.
No, Ed De Hoy, maybe. Jesus wept.
I'm not 100%.
One of them must be Danny Ward. I'm not having Danny Ward. I just picked myself. I'll put Paul into net and pick a different centre mid.
I think you're going to have to pick someone from his... You're going to have to pick someone from his era.
Yeah. And who's the other one?
Your options are Danny Ward, David James or Galacci.
I'll have Galacci, please. Yeah.
Peter Galacci
he's
in goal.
Relatively good.
He's got Peter Galacci in goal. So where Dan's ended up then is he's got Galacci in goal. He's got right back Trent Alexander-Arnold, left back Andy Robertson, centre halves of Carragher and Agger. In front of them, I presume he's got the dream team of Steven Gerrard and Paul Ince. He's not thought about all those characters are going to run up against each other. As he's picked this, he's got Lallana and McManaman doing lovely things on flanks. I would say, to be fair.
Lallana on the left, McManaman on the right.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there.
When Narrow got the width of fullback.
Yep.
And then, tactically this works.
And then you got Torres and Michael Owen up front, which some would say is too much of one thing, but you know,
there's a lot of hair product in that.
It's quite something. So there are your two sides. We'll put something on somewhere. We vote between them. Who's are you going for? Peak. If you've got to pick. Sorry?
I think... Oh, it's tough. I think maybe just Dan.
Yeah. The fullbacks, I think, are grabbing you, but I think we let's not underestimate Marcus Babbel in this. He's got a lot to do, Marcus Babbel.
Is there a centre mid that either of us could have picked here that we've missed? It's obvious.
Redknapp.
Thiago was
oh, God. We've literally just done 15 minutes on him.
Yeah. You both could have
absolute novice.
You both think about Thiago. Fucking Paul Ince.
I never even saw Paul Ince play. We're old enough.
Paul Ince.
Thiago's on holiday now, throwing his phone in the pool, headphones in the pool.
They were just dead
cancelling his subscription.
2 minutes ago told him what a Rolls Royce for playing was. And
he said he's the best player he's ever watched. The best player he's ever watched, and he's ended up picking Paul Ince off the back of it. Here he is, the best player I've ever watched. But what about Ince?
Yeah,
you know
Gary
what,
McAllister.
Gary McAllister, yeah.
In fairness, I saw Thiago play in Euro 2020. He came on for Spain against Italy in the semi-final of that Euros, and it was the fucking worst performance I've ever seen off anyone. Remember Milner at Goodison?
Yeah, like that.
Worst.
Wow.
Times it by 100.
Well, you could also have had Milner.
They were I could have. This is getting worse. They were in the ascendancy. They were looking for someone to come on and play a few nice balls because Italy were fucked, and he boomed everything 50 yards out of play. It was amazing. So I've disqualified him on that basis, is not what I'm saying.
There you are. Anyway, we'll get some sort of vehicle to vote for that. Someone
John Barnes is the one I can't believe didn't come out.
Was he played at
Euro 92.
I would never have thought of that, to be honest.
That's what it was. I didn't know whether he played in the Euros.
It's whether it has to be a Premier League Euros, because he played for Liverpool in the Premier League and played in '88.
No, I think you can have that one. You could have had John Barnes on a technicality. In the same way you could have had Fowler's almost a technicality in a way, that far back and doesn't get on very much, but gets on a little bit. But I like the McManaman shout. I was
also going to have Morientes. I had my back pocket there.
Well, I think tactically, I think you went 0 too early. But that's
I'm all right.
That's all right. You can vote between them, see how they get on.
Canate, another one was.
He's not played.
Has he not played?
He's not played in this one. I don't think he played in the last one.
Right. Okay. That was
one worth considering. Dejan Lovren brought back for his Virgil van Dijk partnership. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed to Jordan Singleton, and he's just done those boss graphics that you got to see. Andy Heaton for producing. There may not have been any graphics. We'll find out what graphics there were. Maybe the images of the faces pop onto screen. Whooshing. I don't know. I'm just one fella. Andy Heaton for producing the sound. Sean Rogers, Dan Austin, and Paul Johnson. Last little thing. Whilst you can have political disagreements with people all over the place, couldn't be prouder of Alison McGovern being made a minister. My hero, my mate. See you later.